Hey everyone, my name's Thomas Little, and I just want to do a few plugs before we get started on our video. You can reach me on Twitter at ThomasLittleDBA. You can reach me on Facebook, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channels. A lot of great videos coming out, and alike. So let's go ahead and get started on our video. So let's get started with our demonstration. What you see here is I have a remote session open to our Windows Server 2012 R2 server. It is just a plain installation. It does have a installation of SQL Server 2014 in which we are going to do an upgrade of a little later on in the video. But what we're going to do right now is actually go through step by step the installation of SQL Server 2016 on this server. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go to our installation media. We're going to do that by opening up this computer. We're going to look to see, so you see here on my D drive, I have the installation media for SQL Server 2016. Now the one thing that I like to do usually as just a precaution is I'll explore the CD and I'll look at the setup, but I always right click on it and run it as administrator. It's just a precaution just to make sure that the installation media that we're installing as an administrative right, so it has access to what it needs to do the installation. There are times when you run it under a particular account, it may not have access to that. Now also keep in mind that it is definitely preferred and you should log in to your server using an administrative right. Now what you'll see here is after the installation has come up, you have the installation center. And in the installation center you have a number of different options that you can do with SQL Server 2016. In the planning session you can read installation information and information about the SQL Server 2016 software. You can also do the system configuration checker. And what this will do is we'll check your installation or check your server to make sure that you have everything ready for your installation of SQL Server 2016. If you're doing an upgrade, you can look to download the Upgrade Advisor, which will basically go through all the components and your system and give you recommendations on what you need to do to upgrade to SQL Server 2016. This is a very useful tool just to get a feel and an idea for what problems you may run into if you're doing an upgrade in place. There's also a number of different links to upgrade documentation and documentation alike. Now there's also the installation tab. On the installation tab, which is where we're going to spend some of our time, you can actually start the installation of SQL Server 2016 in a number of different ways. You can do a standalone instance, which is what we're going to do today. You can install the SQL Server management tools and the SQL Server data tools. SSD provides some integration into Visual Studio, and that's going to be that'll probably be another video that we do, but that's a great tool to download for some developers and administrators. You can start an installation on a failover cluster, so this will actually, if you have a 2016 failover cluster installed, you can start the installation right from here. You can add nodes to the cluster going forward. Here you can upgrade from a previous version of SQL Server, so we'll do that a little bit later on. And R services, which is something new, and we'll get into that a little bit later. On the maintenance side, you can do a number of different things. You can do an addition upgrade. So if you have an upgrade of SQL Server 2016 standard and you've bought your licenses and have those all procured, and you want to upgrade to Enterprise Edition, you can do a simple addition upgrade right from here. Very easy thing to do, very quick thing to do also. Excuse me. You can also repair an installation if your installation goes bad. You can also repair the installation. You can remove nodes from a failover cluster. So if you're If you have a 5 node cluster, you need to remove one to do some maintenance on it. Maybe rebuild. Maybe you have to rebuild it. It had some hardware failures. You can remove it from the cluster using this tool. And then you can launch Windows updates to search for product updates of SQL Server. Okay. There's the tools section. We talked about the system configuration checker. You could do that. Discovery report. Uh, view all. You can view a report of the SQL Server products and features that are locally installed. The map tool is a great tool to use if you want to do kind of an inventory of what is installed on your SQL Server. I definitely recommend using that, and that's probably a little bit of a different video. But basically, you can get kind of an inventory, not just of your SQL Server, but all of your database environments. And it pulls back some really nice reports, some Excel reports and Word documents that you can use to give to maybe your manager, like of what your inventory looks like for SQL Server. Okay. All right, so let's jump into the installation of it. We're going to click on installation and go to Standalone Installation. After you click that, you come to the product screen. Now, we're doing the evaluation copy of SQL Server 2016, but if you do have a product key, you can enter it here. If you have the you can also do the developer edition and the express edition. So as I mentioned before in the editions in session 1, we talked about editions. Remember, developer and express are free, so you can actually do there. We're going to just do our evaluation, and we're going to click next. Now, on the licensing terms, always have to accept Microsoft's licensing terms, so you want to click accept and next. Next, we're going to go through some of the global rules, and this is kind of like a system check on SQL Server, and it will also install some support files needed for the setup. After that, we're going to do the Microsoft update. Now, I don't have internet connection from my machine here, but what you could do, if your machine does have an internet connection, you can click on updates and click next, and what it'll do is it'll actually go out to Microsoft's site and download some of the latest updates for SQL Server 2016. Since I don't have an internet connection, we're just go ahead and click next, and when you click next, you get this little error message that says, hey, I cannot reach the Windows Update service. We're fine with that. We can go ahead and click next. Now what it's going to do is do some installs of the setup files, and these setup files are to support the installation of SQL Server. So in our install rules screen, it goes through and it tries to identify any problems that you might run into when you're going through setup or doing your installation of SQL Server. Now you'll see here that we have a warning here, and I'm sure it's because we just didn't have an internet connection to Yep, we didn't have an internet connection. So that's okay. We can go ahead and bypass that. That's not a problem there. Now our next screen is the feature selection screen. And these are, as we talked about in previous sessions, all of the SQL Server components that you can install. You can install the database engine services and all of its components like full text and replication. You can install all R services, reporting services, analysis services, and alike. So what we're going to do for this demonstration is just do the replication and data services. Now down here in the root directory, you can specify where you want to install all of the binary files associated with SQL Server. We're just going to choose the default right now and click next. Now we come to our installation configuration. Again, as we talked about in previous sessions, there's two types of instances. You can have a default instance or a named instance. We are going to install a named instance of SQL Server. And what we're going to do is, here we go. What we'll do is we're going to name our installation. So we're going to call our installation SQL Server 2016. And when you click on the instance ID, it'll automatically pre-fill, and you'll see that the SQL Server directory will automatically pre-fill with our instancing there. You can also see other installations of SQL Server installed. So you'll see this MSSQL upgrade instance that we have installed. We're going to be using that to do an upgrade from 2014 to 2016 a little bit later on in this demonstration. But you can see all of the other installations. If you have multiple copies of SQL Server installed, you'll be able to see all of those. So we filled in our information. We're going to click next here. And then our next screen is the server configuration screen. Our next screen is our service account screen. As we talked about in our previous slides or previous sessions, this is where you would go to configure accounts for the SQL Server agent, the database engine. If you installed reporting services, that will be listed here. Integration services would be listed here, and alike. So this is where you would configure those screens. I'm going to keep mine as default, so we're not going to do anything here. But this is again where you would want to type in those domain accounts if you're preferring to use a domain account. For this installation, we're going to use just a local account. I don't have this machine on domain, but we're just going to do local accounts here. The other option that we have is grant perform volume maintenance task privileges for the database engine. And what this is basically is it allows for fast execution of file operations, and it reclaims used disk space without filling that space with zeros. Now, as a default, I started to check this going forward, so I would definitely recommend going there. And you actually can read more information about that by clicking the details link here. The other option we have is collation, so you could set the collation of your SQL Server to that. I usually keep this default. I haven't had to change it. So we go from there and we click next. Our next screen is the database engine configuration screen. So this is where we get to choose the authentication mode. We type in the password for SA, we add additional administrators, we change the file placement of our MDF, NDFs, LDFs, and our tempdb. We configure file streams. We do a lot of that here. So for this demonstration, we're going to do mixed services, and we're going to put in a very strong password for our configuration or our installation. We're also going to add the current user for this installation to that, so that the current user is an administrator. We can click on our Data Directories tab, and you can see here now we have the option of changing where files get placed. So database logs, and data, we can change where those are located. We can change the backup directory on where that's located. You can click on the tempdb, and you can actually change the location of tempdb, determine the number of files that it creates, and alike. There are specific rules around tempdb, and there's a lot of white papers written about that. That's probably a whole other video in just maintaining and configuring tempdb. So what I would recommend right now is use the defaults that come with SQL Server, because it already does some of that analysis for you. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and click next. And what's going to happen here is at the feature configuration rules, it's going to go through and make sure that all the rules apply for the features and jump right into getting ready to do the installation. Now here it kind of summarizes what the installation does. So we're going to be doing an install of the evaluation copy. These prerequisites are already installed, so we talked about that in previous screens, where the installation of SQL Server 2016 and all of its prerequisites need to be installed. Here it tells you what installations you're going to need, what instances are being installed, where they're being installed, and alike. Here at the configuration path is actually the file needed to do the installation. You can actually take this file and copy it and perform other installations later on through a command line, doing silent installations and alike. So you can actually take that file and use what the setup has already created. For us, we're already finished here, so we're going to head and click install. And at this point, it's going to bring us to the installation process. It's going to do all the installation of SQL Server. So we'll wait there to get that installation completed. Now you can see that our installation has completed successfully.